My parents were skipping my Stanford graduation. I stood in the cold, sterile hallway of the engineering building, the phone pressed hard against my ear, listening to the chipper, oblivious tone in my mother's voice. My fingers were numb, but not just from the air conditioning. She was talking about flight times, but they weren't for San Francisco. They were for Los Angeles. The timing is just impossible. Elena, my mother, Marian, was saying. I could hear the faint clinking of glasses in the background. She was probably at a luncheon. Sophia landed a walk-on role. Just 2 lines. But the producer said she has real presence. Can you believe it? So, Arthur and I are flying down this weekend to celebrate. We're closing on a condo for her in Santa Monica. A graduation present. Really, even though she's only 19. I stared at the wall opposite me. It was covered in posters for senior projects, drones, robotics, new app designs. My graduation, I said, my voice sounding flat and distant even to myself. It's on Saturday. You've had the invitation for 3 weeks. I know, dear, and we are so proud of you. But this is Sophia's moment. Her career is at such a critical launch point. Arthur agrees. You've always been so independent. You understand. Just find a ride from a friend. We'll celebrate with you when we get back to New York. A condo. For 2 lines. The familiar, cold feeling settled in my stomach. That heavy, sinking weight of invisibility I had known my entire life. I was 22 years old. And in 30 minutes, I had a video call with Vanguard Capital. The call that could finalize a multi-million-dollar funding round for a company I had built from the dust of my dorm room. A company they knew nothing about. I see, I said. My throat felt tight. Okay. Mom. Wonderful. We'll call you from LA. We love you. The line clicked dead. I didn't move for a long time. I am Elena Sanchez, and I am used to this. Growing up in our sprawling New York apartment, I always felt like I was living in the shadow of a different son. My stepfather, Arthur Vance, had been in my life since I was 2. He was a powerful investment banker, a man who saw the world in terms of assets and liabilities, profits and losses. He was cold, precise, and valued presence and social capital above all else. I, with my nose in a book and my quiet, analytical nature, was a social liability. My mother, Marian, was a renowned neurologist. I used to be so proud of that, but her work became secondary to her obsession with social standing, with galas and benefits. Her love was a fragile thing, tangled up in how my achievements reflected on her at dinner parties. And then there was Sophia, my younger sister, born when I was 3. She was bright, loud, charming, and effortlessly beautiful. From the moment she came home, it felt like all the light in our home bent toward her. I became the reliable one, the smart one, the child who was expected to be perfect, quiet, and entirely self-sufficient. The pattern was set in stone before I even understood it. When I was 14, I won the New York State Science Fair. I had spent 6 agonizing months designing and building a small-scale bioreactor in my bedroom. When I presented my first-place medal to my parents, Arthur was reading the Wall Street Journal. He glanced up, nodded once. Good work, Elena. Keep it up. My mother smiled. A brief, tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. That's wonderful. Dear, just make sure you thank your teachers. It looks good for the school. 2 weeks later, Sophia, who was 11, was cast as the lead in her middle school production of Annie. My parents threw a massive party. They catered it. They invited Arthur's business partners, my mother's hospital colleagues, and a theater critic from a local paper. Arthur gave a booming speech about Sophia's natural star power and infectious charm. He called her his little supernova. I sat in the corner, trying to do my calculus homework. A business associate of Arthur's patted me on the head as he passed. And you must be the bookworm, he said, laughing. Arthur laughed with him. I felt my face burn, and I retreated to my room, the sound of their applause for Sophia echoing down the hall. I learned that my achievements were expected, and hers were exceptional. I poured everything I had into my work. I joined the math league, the coding club, and the debate team. My report cards were a perfect, unbroken line of A+. They were always met with the same distant approval. That is what we expect from you, Elena. Meanwhile, Sophia would get a B- in English, and my parents would praise her for expressing her creative side and not being a grind like your sister. Our relationship was, by necessity, distant. I never hated her. How could I? She was just as much a product of their world as I was, cast in the role of the golden child. But she grew up getting everything she wanted. She never had to try. When she failed her driver's test 3 times, my father hired a private instructor who all but took the test for her. When I, at 16, asked for a $500 advanced programming course, Arthur told me to save up my allowance. A girl with your brains should be able to get a scholarship for that. Elena, show some initiative. I ended up teaching myself from library books. The most painful memory, the one that cemented my path, came during my senior year of high school. I was named valedictorian. It was the culmination of years of sleepless nights, of sacrificing social events, of constant, relentless work. The ceremony was on a Friday evening. When I told my parents, my mother's face physically tightened. I watched the muscles in her jaw clench. "Oh, Elena," she said, wringing her hands. That's the same night as Sophia's regional theater showcase. She has a small speaking part, just a few lines, but it's very important for her networking. An agent from LA is supposed to be there. Valedictorian, I repeated, holding the printed announcement. I'm giving the speech. You'll be wonderful, I'm sure, Arthur said, not looking up from his tablet. But Sophia's opportunity is time-sensitive. You understand. We'll get a video of your speech. I stood at my high school graduation ceremony alone. As I stood at the podium, looking out at the sea of parents' proud fathers, mothers weeping with joy, I delivered my speech about the future of technology and human innovation. I saw the 2 empty seats in the 3rd row, right on the aisle, where my family was supposed to be. That night, I went home, packed a box of my most important books, and made a promise to myself. I had been accepted to Stanford with a partial scholarship. It was a good one, covering my tuition, but it left nothing for housing, food, books, or the staggering cost of living in Palo Alto. My parents had vaguely offered to help with expenses, but after that night, I decided I would never ask them for a single dollar. The summer before college, I worked 2 jobs. From 5 a.m. to noon, I was a barista, the smell of burnt espresso clinging to my clothes. From 1 p.m. to 8 p.m., I was a data entry clerk in a windowless office. I saved every penny. When it was time to leave for California, I packed my life into 2 suitcases. My parents were surprised when I told them I was taking the shuttle to the airport. Don't be dramatic, Elena, my mother said. We can drive you. I'm fine, I told them, my voice firm. I can take myself. My mother looked worried. For a second. Do you have enough money? Elena, California is very expensive. I have my savings, I said. Arthur looked up from his financial paper. College is a big expense. Don't waste it on parties or frivolous things. It's an investment. Don't squander it. That was it. That was their send-off. As I walked out the apartment door, I saw them in the living room, already on the phone with Sophia, discussing her new, expensive headshots. I felt a strange, cold freedom. I was finally, completely, on my own. My first year at Stanford was the hardest year of my life. It was a brutal awakening. While other students from wealthy families were networking, joining clubs, and complaining about their 100-level classes, I was in a constant state of panic about money. I was balancing a full course load with 3 part-time jobs. I worked in the university library, deep in the archives. I loved it there. It was silent, and the smell of dust and old paper felt like a comfort. I could study between shelving ancient manuscripts. Between classes, I worked as a barista at a campus coffee shop, forcing a smile for students who would complain about their lattes, while I mentally calculated if I could afford to buy vegetables that week. On weekends, I tutored wealthy undergraduates in calculus and physics, patiently explaining the same simple concepts over and over for $50 an hour. Sleep was a luxury I rationed. I lived in the smallest dorm room on campus, a single room that was rumored to be a converted storage closet. My window faced a brick wall. I ate instant noodles almost every night, and I became an expert at finding free food. I knew which departmental lectures had the best complimentary pizza and which evening symposiums offered cookies. I remember walking past a restaurant in downtown Palo Alto, seeing a group of students from my economics class laughing, sharing bottles of wine. My stomach ached with hunger, and I felt a wave of such profound loneliness that I almost turned around and went back to New York. But I didn't. I went back to the library. It was in the library, during a late-night study session, that I met Leo Ramirez. He was a computer science student from East LA, also on a scholarship, and just as exhausted as I was. We were the only two people in the engineering library at 3 a.m. on a Tuesday. He was staring at the same textbook I was trying to find, the one that cost $300. Insane. Right, he muttered, running a hand through his hair. Insane. I agreed. Want to split it? He asked. You take it Mondays and Wednesdays. I take it Tuesdays and Thursdays. We bonded instantly. We were two people from different worlds, united by the same struggle. We shared textbooks, split cheap burritos, and became each other's support system. He was brilliant, funny, and fiercely loyal. Your family is loaded, right? He asked me one night, as we were debugging his code. I saw your stepfather's name in a finance article. Vance Capital. I just shrugged, not looking up from the screen. They want me to be self-sufficient. Leo stopped typing. He turned to me. That's not self-sufficient, Elena. That's neglect. There's a difference. It was the first time anyone had ever named it so bluntly. Hearing it from him, someone I respected, made the truth land with a new, sharp pain. The real change happened in my sophomore year. I took an advanced bioengineering course with Professor Evelyn Reed. She was a legend in her field. Sharp, demanding, and she didn't waste her time on unprepared students. I was terrified of her. I sat in the back row, took meticulous notes, and never spoke. One day, I turned in a midterm paper. It wasn't on the assigned topic. Instead, I had written a proposal analyzing new models for diagnostic AI in radiology. I was sure I would fail. After class, she asked me to stay. This, she said, holding my paper, is not what I assigned. I know, Professor. I'm sorry. This is graduate-level thinking. Elena. She cut me off. She looked at me, her eyes sharp and penetrating. Your mind doesn't just solve problems. It finds the right problems to solve. Where did this come from? That conversation opened a door. I found my voice. I told her about my grandmother. I told her how, years ago, my grandmother had a severe stroke. The first hospital, a small community one, had sent her home. The intern on duty said it was just a migraine, that the shadow on the MRI was probably just an artifact from the machine. My own mother, the renowned neurologist, had been too busy attending a gala to take the call or look at the scans herself. By the time my grandmother had a massive, secondary stroke 2 days later, it was too late to save her. I think, I said to Professor Reed, my voice shaking slightly. I think an AI could have caught that shadow. The data was there. The intern just didn't know how to read it. I want to build an algorithm I want to build something that sees what the human eye misses. Professor Reed didn't laugh. She didn't tell me it was too ambitious. She simply nodded. A slow, thoughtful expression on her face. That's a problem worth solving. Ms. Sanchez, let's get you some lab time. She became the mentor I never had. She was the supportive, guiding adult I had always wished my parents were. She lent me books. She gave me a key to her private lab. She introduced me to her graduate students. And, most importantly, she listened to my ideas. That idea became my obsession. It became Aura Diagnostics. I spent every free moment I had, which meant most nights from midnight to 4 a.m. in that lab. I taught myself advanced machine learning. I read thousands of decommissioned medical papers and analyzed tens of thousands of anonymized scans. I was pulled from the memory by the vibration of my phone. I was still standing in the cold, silent hallway. The call with my mother felt like a lifetime ago. My phone buzzed again. It was a text from Leo. Big meeting in 15. Vanguard Capital is on the line. You ready to change the world? I looked at the phone. I thought of my mother's voice, chirping about a condo in Santa Monica. I thought of my father's dismissive, don't squander it. I thought of my grandmother, and the shadow on the scan. I took a deep breath, pushing the familiar, cold ache down. I replaced it with something else, something hard, and sharp, and focused. I walked back toward the lab, my footsteps echoing in the empty hall. I am ready, I typed back. The holidays were always the hardest. While other students packed their bags, excited to fly home, I stayed on campus. The dorms would empty out, becoming cold, silent buildings that echoed with every footstep. The silence was heavy, a constant reminder of my isolation. I picked up every extra shift I could at the coffee shop and the library, grateful for the holiday pay and for the distraction. The hum of the espresso machine or the rustle of old paper was better than the emptiness of my room. I remember my junior year. On Thanksgiving Day, the campus was a ghost town, covered in a thin layer of frost. I was working a double shift at the library, shelving books in the history section. The air smelled like dust and old glue. Around 4 p.m., I took my 15-minute break and went to the empty staff lounge, the fluorescent lights humming overhead. I pulled out my phone, my fingers cold, and called home. I just wanted to hear a voice, to feel connected. Even for a minute, my mother answered, her voice high and breathless, almost shouting over a din of noise. Elena, we're just in the middle of a celebration, she exclaimed. I could hear a loud party in the background, a wave of laughter, clinking glasses, and music. I just wanted to say Happy Thanksgiving, I said. My voice sounded small and thin in the empty break room. Oh, yes. You too. Dear, it's so exciting. Sophia brought home her new acting coach. He's very important. Elena. He's worked with major celebrities. Arthur is just thrilled. He's in the living room with him right now. Networking. He says this is the kind of connection we've been waiting for. A real foothold in Los Angeles. That's great. Mom, I said, tracing the pattern on the linoleum floor with my shoe. I have to run. Darling, he's about to give a toast. Arthur is motioning for me. Call again soon, we love you, she hung up. I stared at the black screen of my phone. The silence of the lounge rushed back in. I pulled my dinner out of my backpack, a turkey sandwich on stale bread that I had bought from the campus vending machine that morning. I ate it slowly, methodically. I could taste the preservatives in the bread. I finished it, threw the wrapper in the bin, and walked back out into the stacks. I had 4 more hours on my shift. My isolation was reinforced in other ways. I dated, briefly, in my sophomore year. His name was David. He was in my economics class. Charming, funny, and from a wealthy family in New York, much like my own. For a few weeks, it felt normal. He was generous, always trying to take me to expensive dinners in Palo Alto or on weekend trips to Napa. I always had to say no. I can't. I'd say, I have to work at the library. Another shift, he'd ask, his frustration growing. It's Saturday night. One evening, He tried to surprise me with tickets to a concert in San Francisco. I had to turn him down. I had a 12-hour tutoring block scheduled to pay for my textbooks for the next quarter. I don't get it. Elena, he said, finally exploding. Why are you doing this? You're working at a coffee shop. Your stepfather is Arthur Vance. I've read about him. Just ask your parents for money. Why are you making everything so hard for yourself? It's stubborn. It's not like that. I tried to explain, but the words wouldn't come. How could I make him understand? How could I explain the valedictory speech to an empty room? Or the Thanksgiving call? How could I explain that asking them for money felt like a deeper kind of failure? It's not stubborn. I finally said, it's just... Mina, I need to do this on my own. He looked at me, his eyes full of a pity that was worse than his anger. Well, I can't compete with... Whatever this is. We broke up. It didn't hurt as much as I thought it would. It just made me feel colder. More alone. Like I was a different species from all the smiling, carefree people around me. My life became a repeating, monastic cycle classes, labs, and work. But Aura Diagnostics was growing. It was my secret. My real life. My work with Professor Reed had become the central focus of my existence. She was the one who pushed me to take my algorithm from a theoretical project to a real-world tool. You need to enter the Stanford Innovation Prize. Elena, she told me one afternoon in the lab. We were looking at my latest model's results on a set of test scans. That's for entire startups. I said, shaking my head. It's for teams of MBA candidates. I'm just a student. It's just an algorithm on my laptop. No, she said, turning to face me, her voice firm. It's more than that. This algorithm is already performing at 94% accuracy. That's better than a senior radiologist. This could save lives. Elena, but to save lives, it needs to get out of this lab. It needs to be a product. And for that, you need funding. You need servers. You need to build a company. She saw the fear in my eyes. I was terrified of failing, of putting my one precious idea out into the world, just to have it torn apart by men in suits. I'll sponsor you, she said, cutting off my doubts. I'll get you dedicated lab space, not just the shared benches. And more importantly, I'll get you priority time on the university's supercomputer. You need to process more data. A lot more. Go. Apply. Her belief in me was a lifeline. It was a kind of nourishment, a warmth I had never received from my own family. I asked Leo to join me as a co-founder. He was a coding genius, and I needed someone I could trust with my life. He immediately agreed, his eyes lighting up. Aura Diagnostics, he said, testing the name. I like it. It sounds like the future. You build the brain. I'll build the body. He became my chief operating officer, though we didn't use titles. He handled the code architecture, the user interface, and the platform. While I focused on the deep learning models of the AI, our lives became a blur. We worked out of the small, windowless lab space Professor Reed had secured for us. We lived on stale coffee and the adrenaline of creation. We slept on 2 old cots in the corner, often for only 2 or 3 hours at a time. The room smelled like ozone and hot electronics. We argued over lines of code, celebrated small breakthroughs with high fives, and pushed each other forward. There were so many setbacks. I remember one night, 3 weeks before the competition, we discovered a critical flaw. Our algorithm, which was so good at finding most tumors, was keeping misidentifying a specific, rare type of brain tumor. It was a fatal error. The exact kind of tragic mistake I was trying to prevent. We have to rebuild the entire recognition model, I said, my hands shaking as I looked at the string of false negatives on the screen. Elena, that's weeks of work, Leo said, his face pale with exhaustion. He rubbed his eyes, leaving red marks. The presentation is in 3 weeks. We can't. We have to, I said. My voice was quiet, but it didn't shake. We're not presenting a product that makes that mistake. We will not sleep. We worked for 72 hours straight. We barely spoke. The only sounds were the clicking of our keyboards and the hum of the servers. We coded. We tested. We argued. We recoded. We drank so much coffee that my heart felt like it was fluttering in my chest. A trapped bird. On the third day, I founded a tiny, overlooked variable in the original dataset. A piece of noise that was poisoning the model. I isolated it. I rewrote the filter. We ran the test again, using the same failed dataset, a perfect 100% identification rate. Leo and I just stared at the screen, too tired to even celebrate. I put my head down on the desk, the plastic cool against my forehead, and cried silent, exhausted tears. Just when we thought we were stable, a new disaster struck. 2 weeks before the competition, the grant that funded our server time the supercomputer access Professor Reed had secured was suddenly put under administrative review. It was a bureaucratic error, but the result was the same. We received an automated email. Our access to the supercomputer would be revoked in 24 hours. My blood ran cold. Real. Sharp. Icy fear seized me. This was it. Without that processing power, Aura Diagnostics was dead. All our work. All those sleepless nights. All those sacrifices. Gone. Ipanixt. My hand, shaking so hard I could barely hold my phone, reached for my pocket. I could call Arthur. I could beg. I could swallow my pride, my anger, my pain, and ask him for the money. He was an investment banker. He could fix this in 5 minutes with a single phone call. A transfer of funds. I had his number dialed. My thumb hovered over the call button. I saw his face in my mind. That cold, appraising look he always gave me. I heard his voice. College is an investment. Don't squander it. And then, worse, I knew you couldn't handle it on your own. You finally had to come to me. I couldn't. I physically could not press the button. I deleted the number. I threw my phone onto the cot. Leo, I said, my voice hoarse. We have a problem. A big one. Leo, ever the pragmatist, just nodded. Okay, so we find a new way. He spent the next 6 hours on the phone, pacing the small lab, calling in favors, talking to every CS professor he knew. He found a workaround, a crazy lost patchwork solution, a way to reroute our models through a distributed computing network, using the idle processing power of 3 different university departments: engineering, physics, and geology. It was slower. It was unstable. But it worked. We were alive. The day of the Innovation Prize presentation. I was so nervous I felt sick. My hands were freezing. We were just 2 students, running on no sleep. Our presentation slides put together at 4 a.m. We were presenting our idea against teams of polished MBA candidates with expensive suits and slick, pre-designed graphics. I stood in the wings of the auditorium, looking at the panel of venture capitalists who were the judges. A wave of guilt washed over me. A hot, prickling shame. I thought of my grandmother. Was I really doing this for her? Or was I just doing this to build something so big, so undeniably successful, that my parents would have to see me? Was this all just a desperate, childish scream for attention? Hey, Leo's voice cut through my panic. He touched my arm. I looked at him. He looked just as tired as I felt, but his eyes were bright. You're the smartest person I know. Elena, you've got this. This isn't for them. This isn't for your family. This is for us. This is for your grandmother. This is for the work. Now, go. He was right. I took a deep breath, pushed the guilt and the fear and the anger down, and walked onto the stage. I don't remember much of the presentation. I just remember my voice, clear and steady, filling the auditorium. I talked about the data. I talked about the shadow on the scan. I talked about the unacceptable margin of human error and the lives that could be saved. When I finished, The room was silent. Then, the judges started asking questions. They were sharp, technical, and brutal. They tore into our business model, our scaling plan, or data. But I was ready. I had lived this data for 2 years. I answered every question. I defended every projection. When they announced the winner, I didn't even hear it at first. The name Aura Diagnostics just hung in the air. Leo had to grab my arm, shaking me. "Elena, that's us. We won. Aura Diagnostics had won the grand prize, $100. 0 inches seed funding." I felt my knees buckle. We had done it. The win changed everything. We were no longer just a student project. We were a company. And the win got us noticed. A week later, I got an email from a man named Mark Harrison, a major Silicon Valley venture capitalist. He wanted to have lunch. I met him at a cafe in Palo Alto. I was still wearing my student clothes, jeans, and a sweatshirt. He was in a perfectly tailored suit. He cut right to the chase, not even waiting for his espresso. "I read your white paper, Ms. Sanchez," he said, his eyes sharp. "Your algorithm is revolutionary. I am prepared to offer you $3 million for the entire intellectual property. Right now, you can graduate, pay off any loans, and walk away a very wealthy young woman. You never have to work another day if you don't want to." $3 million. I couldn't even process the number. It was an escape. It was safety. It was more money than I had ever imagined. It was a solution to every problem. I could have a real apartment. I could sleep for a week. I could stop working 3 jobs. I thought about my student debt. I thought about how easy it would be to just say yes. But then I thought about the algorithm. It wasn't finished. It was just the beginning. I thought about what it felt like to solve the problem, to build something that mattered, to stand on that stage. I looked him right in the eye. "Thank you for the offer, Mr. Harrison. But I'm not selling. The company isn't for sale." He looked surprised. Then he broke into a wide smile. A real smile. "I was hoping you'd say that. What I am looking for," I continued, my voice gaining a strength I didn't know I had, "is a partner. I'm looking for an investor who understands the vision. Someone who wants to build this with me." He closed his notebook. "Good. Then let's talk about a real investment. Let's talk about Series A." The next day, Mark Harrison invested $1 million for a 10% stake in Aura Diagnostics. We were officially born. My senior year was a tightrope walk over a canyon. I was still a full-time student, drowning in advanced coursework for my honors thesis. But I was also the CEO of a $1 million company. The investment from Mark Harrison was a lightning bolt. It allowed us to move out of the cramped university lab and into a small, rented office space in a glass building just off campus. The rent was more per month than I had personally earned in the last 3 years combined. We hired a small, dedicated team, besides Leo, who was now officially the chief operating officer. We brought on 2 brilliant computer science students, Raj and Chloe, who were even younger than us, and a graduate student specializing in data security. The titles felt strange, like costumes we were wearing for a play. I'd sit in my quantum physics lecture, taking notes on particle wave duality, and my phone would vibrate silently in my pocket. It would be a text from Leo payroll provider has a glitch. Our team might not get paid. I'd have to excuse myself from class, my heart pounding, run to a bathroom stall, and spend 20 minutes on the phone with a bank, authorizing a wire transfer as Elena Sanchez, CEO, before running back to class to finish my notes on Schrödinger's equation. My days were an absurd, exhausting blur. I'd wake at 5 a.m., work on Aura's core code for 3 hours, run to my 9 a.m. class on molecular biology, grab a coffee, then run to our office for a 12 p.m. meeting with our new legal team. After that, I'd go back to campus for an advanced lab, then back to the office from 4 p.m. until midnight, working with Leo and the team. Then, I'd go back to my tiny, cold dorm room and do my homework for my classes until 2 a.m. I was surviving on 4 hours of sleep. fueled by a relentless, humming energy that was part passion, part terror of failure. Professor Reed, having seen our success in the Innovation Prize, formally joined our advisory board. She would come to our new office once a week. She wasn't a professor in those meetings, she was our guide. She would sit at our cheap conference table, drink our bad coffee, and listen. When I was overwhelmed, panicking about our server costs or a new competitor, she would just look at me calmly. Breathe. Elena, look at the data. What is the next logical step? Don't look at the mountain. Look at the path. Her steady, unconditional support was the anchor that kept me from drifting away. The breakthrough, the one that changed everything, came in March of my senior year. We had secured a research partnership with a major hospital in Stockholm, Sweden, giving us access to a massive, new dataset of anonymized scans. We weren't just trying to identify tumors anymore. I was trying to teach the AI to predict malignancy rates, to see the subtle, microscopic cellular patterns that signaled a benign tumor was about to turn aggressive. Long before a human pathologist could, I had been working on the new model for months. I set up a massive blind study. The AI would analyze 10,000 scans. Its findings would be compared to the results from a panel of 15 senior radiologists who had reviewed the same 10,000 scans. I hit run on the program at 8 a.m., right before leaving for my thermodynamics final exam. I was in the exam for 3 hours. I came back to the office, my mind numb from calculating entropy. Leo was standing in front of the main monitor. He wasn't moving. He was just standing there, his hands on his head, staring at the screen. Leo, what's wrong? I asked, my heart sinking. Did it crash? Did the data corrupt? He didn't turn around. His voice was a whisper. It didn't crash. Elena, look. I walked slowly to the monitor. I looked at the results. The panel of 15 senior radiologists, all experts with decades of experience, had an accuracy rate of 88% in identifying early-stage cancer. It was the industry gold standard. Aura Diagnostics had an accuracy rate of 99%. But that wasn't the breakthrough. I scrolled down. Look at the malignancy predictions, Leo said, his voice shaking. In the 500 cases that the human panel had unanimously flagged as benign or low risk, watch and wait. Our AI had reclassified 82 of them as high-probability malignancy. Immediate biopsy recommended. We cross-referenced with the final biopsy reports from the hospital's archives. Leo said. My eyes scanned the column. Of those 82 cases, the AI was right in 81 of them. It had found 81 aggressive cancers that 15 human experts had missed. It wasn't just seeing tumors. It was seeing the future. It was seeing death. And stopping it. We just stood there, in silence, for a full minute. I felt a chill run down my entire body. We have to publish this, I said. We published the blind study in a major medical journal. The day it was released, my phone did not stop ringing. The news hit the tech and medical communities like a shockwave. We weren't just a student project anymore. We were, suddenly, one of the most important medical AI companies in the world. This led to the Series A funding round. This was the big one. We weren't asking for 1 million. We were asking for 40. This was the deal I was working on in the weeks leading up to graduation. The negotiations were intense, held in sterile, high-rise boardrooms in San Francisco. I sat at the head of a long, polished mahogany table, a 2-year-old, in my only suit, across from a row of men in their 50s from Vanguard Capital. The cutthroat firm Mark Harrison had warned me about. They didn't just question the numbers. They questioned me. You're a student. The lead investor, a man named Blevins, said, his voice dripping with condescension. What do you know about running a global corporation? This is a volatile market. Ms. Sanchez. This technology is better served being acquired by a seasoned company, someone who knows how to navigate a launch. I was terrified. My palms were sweating. But I just looked him in the eye. Mr. Blevins. The data is the data. My algorithm is 12% more effective than a team of 15 specialists. The lives this will save won't care about market cycles. I'm not here to sell my company. I'm here to find partners to help me run it. I had to do this while studying for my final exams. I would be in a 10-hour negotiation, my mind straining, and then I'd go back to the library and try to memorize organic chemistry formulas. The stress was indescribable. 3 weeks before graduation, I was in the middle of this high-stakes negotiation. I had just come from an 8-hour meeting where Blevins had tried to devalue the company. I was exhausted, but I was hopeful. I was sitting in a cold, concrete hallway of the engineering building, trying to find a quiet place to review my notes for my physics final exam, which was in 1 hour. I still, despite everything, had that small, stupid, childish hope. I had mailed the formal graduation invitations home. I had included a handwritten note. It would mean so much to me if you were there. My phone rang. It was my stepfather, Arthur. "Hello, Dad," I said, my voice lifting, hoping. "Elena," he said, his voice, all business. "We got your invitation. We can't make it to the ceremony." The hope vanished. "Oh," I said. "Why not?" "We have to be in Los Angeles. We're buying Sophia her condo," he said, as if it were the most logical thing in the world. "A condo?" I asked, my voice hollow. I looked at my physics notes, but the words were just black squiggles. "She got a walk-on role," my mother chimed in, now on the speakerphone. Her voice was bright and proud. 2 lines. "The producer said she has real presence, so we're closing on a lovely place in Santa Monica for her. It's a celebration. You understand. Elena, this is her moment. Her career is at such a critical launch point. You've always been so independent." Independent. The word they used as an excuse. "My graduation," I said, my voice flat. "From Stanford. We are very proud of your degree." "Elena," Arthur said, his tone final. "But Sophia's opportunity is now. We'll take you to a nice dinner when we're back in New York. Find a ride from a friend." The line clicked. I sat there, in the silent, cold hallway. The phone was heavy in my hand. I had just spent 8 hours arguing for a $400 million valuation. I was the CEO of a company that was going to save thousands of lives. And my parents were skipping my graduation to buy my sister a condo for getting 2 lines in a TV show. I closed my eyes. I felt a cold, hard resolve settle in my chest, clicking into place like a lock. I stood up, put my phone in my bag, and walked into my final exam. A week before graduation, the $40 million deal with Vanguard Capital closed. I signed the papers in a lawyer's office in San Francisco, my hand perfectly steady. The company was now officially valued at $500 million. I told no one but Leo and Professor Reed. There was no party. There was no celebration. I just signed the papers, took the train back to campus, went to my dorm room, and finished my honors thesis. 2 days later, the news broke. The embargo lifted. I woke up at 6 a.m. to my phone vibrating so hard on my nightstand that it fell to the floor. I picked it up. It was a torrent of notifications, texts, and missed calls. Forbes had run the story as their cover, "The $500 million algorithm: how one Stanford senior is revolutionizing cancer detection." Wired had a companion piece, Elena Sanchez, the student CO, who just raised $40M to teach computers to see death. They both had my name. They both had my photo, a picture Professor Reed had insisted on taking in the lab a month earlier. My phone was exploding, but I was only waiting for one call. It came at 10:04 a.m. It was my mother. I let it ring 3 times before answering. Her voice was a strained, high-pitched shriek. I had never heard her sound like this. Elena, why didn't you tell us?" "Tell you what?" "Mom?" I asked, keeping my voice perfectly calm, perfectly level. "The articles Arthur saw it in Forbes. He's apoplectic. A $500 million company, Aura Diagnostics. Why did you never say anything? We had no idea you were busy. I said, the words cold and even, you had to go to LA. For Sophia's condo. It never came up. Don't be ridiculous, she stammered. Her voice frantic. Arthur is on the phone with the airline right now. He's changing our flights. We are coming. We will be there. We wouldn't miss this for the world. A $500 million company. Oh, Elena, we are so proud of you. I listened to her frantic, breathless pride. A pride that my my honors thesis, and my valedictory speech had never been able to earn. That's great. Mom, I said, and for the first time, I felt nothing. No anger. No pain. Just a vast, cold, empty space. I'm glad you can make it. We'll see you Saturday. Darling, we'll take you to dinner. The best restaurant in the city. We have so much to talk about. We love you. She hung up. I looked at my reflection in the dark screen of my phone. I opened my wallet. My university ID was there. And next to it, my public bus pass. Still valid for another week. I decided, in that moment, I was still going to take the bus to my graduation. It felt important. It was a promise I had to keep to myself. Graduation day dawned with a perfect, bright California clarity. The sky was an endless, cloudless blue. I stood in front of the small, cracked mirror in my dorm room, carefully zipping up the simple black dress I had bought from a thrift store. I pulled the heavy, dark blue graduation robe over it. I adjusted the square cap on my head, the tassel hanging neatly to the side. I looked at myself. I looked tired, but I also looked like the CEO of Aura Diagnostics, whatever that meant. My phone was a bonfire of notifications, texts from investors, emails from news outlets, missed calls from distant relatives I hadn't spoken to in a decade. I ignored them all. I put my phone on silent, picked up my wallet, my keys, and my bus pass, and walked out of the dorm room for the last time. I walked to the public bus stop at the edge of campus, the one I had stood at 1,000 times, usually in the dark, either going to or coming from one of my jobs. The bus arrived with a hydraulic hiss. I climbed on, my robe folded over my arm. It was nearly empty. I sat in my usual seat by the window. As the bus rumbled through the familiar streets of Palo Alto, I watched the world go by. I thought about the girl who had arrived here 4 years ago, with 2 suitcases and a small, fierce knot of anger in her chest. I thought about the nights I had eaten instant noodles for dinner, crying over a physics textbook. I'm sure I was going to fail. I thought about the Thanksgiving I'd spent alone, shelving books. I thought about the terror of almost losing the company, my hand shaking as I almost called my father. And I thought about the cold, final click of the phone when my mother told me they weren't coming. The bus pulled up to the main quad. I got off, said thank you to the driver, and walked onto the campus. Harvard Yard. No. This was Stanford's main quad, was transformed. It was a sea of white chairs, all facing a massive stage draped in cardinal red banners. Thousands of people were already gathering, families laughing, taking photos, hugging their graduates. The air was buzzing with excitement and pride. I scanned the crowd, looking for them. I didn't see them, but I did see 2 other people, standing near the front, saving a seat between them. Professor Evelyn Reed. She was wearing a bright blue dress and looked, for the first time I had ever seen, not like a demanding professor, but just purely happy. And next to her, Leo. He was wearing an actual suit, one I had never seen, and his hair was combed. He saw me and broke into a massive grin, waving me over. I walked toward them. My chosen family. Look at you. Ms. Sanchez, Professor Reed said, her eyes shining. She pulled me into a firm, proud hug. You made it. We made it. I corrected her. Elena, Leo said, his voice thick with emotion. He hugged me tightly. You ready for this, CEO? Just a graduate. Today, I said, smiling. My phone buzzed in my bag. A heavy, insistent vibration. I ignored it. Then, from the corner of my eye, I saw them. They were standing near the main gate, looking lost and flustered. Arthur, my stepfather, was in one of his expensive dark suits, but he looked uncomfortable, checking his watch, his eyes scanning the crowd with irritation. My mother, Marion, was elegant in a pale yellow dress, her social smile fixed on her face, but her eyes were darting around, searching, and behind them, looking bored and scrolling through her phone, was Sophia. They hadn't seen me yet. I had a moment to just watch them. They looked like strangers, visitors from another world, dropped into my life. I took a deep breath. My parents are here. I told Leo. I should go say hello. Professor Reed put a hand on my arm. We'll be right here, she said. It was a promise. I walked toward them, my footsteps steady on the paving stones. Elena, my mother saw me first. Her face lit up with a bright, practiced smile. She rushed forward and pulled me into a hug that felt more like grasping. Her expensive perfume enveloped me. Darling, look at you. All ready for graduation. We were so worried we wouldn't find you in this crowd. You made it, I said. My voice even. Of course we made it. We wouldn't miss this, she said. A little too loudly. Arthur approached. Not with a hug, but with a firm, awkward handshake. Elena. Good turnout. Good weather. His eyes were strange. He was looking at me differently, with a mixture of confusion and calculation, like I was a stock he had misjudged. That article in Forbes. We need to talk about that. A $500 million valuation. That's a serious number. It's graduation. Arthur, I said. Congrats. Elena. Sophia finally looked up from her phone. Her voice was surprisingly genuine. Mom and Dad have been acting totally crazy since they saw that article. It's all they've talked about. It's kind of intense. An announcement crackled over the speakers, asking graduates to assemble for the processional Bay NT and NRD. I have to go, I said, grateful for the interruption. I'm a speaker. My seats are in the graduate section. A speaker, my mother asked, her eyes widening. Why didn't you tell us? It never came up, I said. You can find seats over there. I'll see you after. As I walked away, I heard Sophia say, Wait. She's speaking. I thought we were just coming for the announcement part. The ceremony was long. We marched in. We sat under the warm sun. We listened to speeches from the university president and the provost. I sat with the other honors graduates, my hands folded in my lap. I felt strangely calm, as if I were watching all of this from a great distance. Then it was my turn. I was the student keynote speaker, the valedictorian equivalent. The Dean of Engineering introduced me. And now, to deliver the 2024 student keynote address, graduating with highest honors in bioengineering, Elena Sanchez. I stood up. I walked to the podium. I looked out at the sea of thousands of faces. I saw Leo and Professor Reed in the front row, both beaming, and I saw my family, a few rows back. My mother was sitting perfectly straight. Arthur was looking at his program. Sophia was on her phone. I began my speech. I had revised it the night before. 4 years ago. I began, my voice clear and steady. I came to this campus with 2 suitcases and a partial scholarship. I, like many of us, came here to learn. But the most important lessons aren't always taught in the classroom. I spoke about perseverance. I spoke about the power of finding the right problem to solve. I spoke about the mentors who see your potential before you do, and the friends who become your family. I spoke about my grandmother, and the shadow on a scan. I spoke about what it means to build something from nothing, fueled by a need to make a difference. Success, I concluded, is not about the validation you receive from others. It is about the validation you build for yourself. It is about looking at your work, at your life, and knowing that you did not quit, that you were independent, and that you built something that matters. When I finished, there was a wave of applause. I walked back to my seat, my heart pounding. Then, the dean returned to the podium. Thank you, Elena, for those powerful words. But, ladies and gentlemen, he said, his voice booming, what Ms. Sanchez failed to mention in her humble speech is that just last week, the company she founded in her dorm room, Aura Diagnostics, closed a $40 million Series A funding round. A collective gasp went up from the crowd. The dean wasn't finished. Her company, valued at $500 million, is being featured in Forbes this month for its revolutionary AI technology, which is projected to save thousands of lives by detecting cancer with an accuracy never before seen. Please join me in congratulating a student who truly embodies the spirit of innovation, Elena Sanchez. The applause was deafening. It was a roar. I risked a glance at my family. My father, Arthur, had literally dropped his program. The glossy pages were scattered at his feet. He was staring at the dean, his face pale, his mouth slightly open. My mother sat frozen, her hand covering her mouth, her eyes wide with a kind of shock that was almost comical. And Sophia was staring at me, her jaw open, her phone completely forgotten in her lap. For the first time, she looked genuinely, thoroughly impressed. I turned away and faced the stage, letting the applause wash over me. After the caps were tossed, ayoyus, chaotic explosion of black mortarboards against the blue sky. The crowd flooded the lawn. I was immediately surrounded. Classmates, professors, even the dean himself, all shaking my hand, congratulating me, asking me about Aura. Elena, I had no idea. That's incredible. My uncle is a radiologist. I have to tell him. Through the sea of people, I saw a familiar, determined shape pushing its way toward me. My father. He was moving with an urgency I had never seen, pushing past other families. My mother followed in his wake, her expression a jumbled mess of calculation and confusion. Sophia trailed behind them, her eyes still fixed on me. I excused myself from a conversation with a professor and turned to face them. I felt strangely calm. I had proven everything I needed to prove, and I had done it for myself. Elena, my father boomed, his voice loud enough for everyone around us to hear. He didn't offer a handshake this time. He pulled me into a rough, sudden who, patting me hard on the back. Why didn't you tell us? A $500 million valuation medical AI. This is extraordinary. I have contacts in finance, in global markets. I could have helped you. We could have avoided those vulture capitalists at Vanguard. I stood stiffly in his embrace. It's handled, Arthur, I said, pulling away. And you were busy. You had to go to Los Angeles. The condo. My mother burst in, her voice shrill. We can cancel that. Of course, this is just wonderful. Darling, we are so proud of you. We must celebrate. I will book a table at the best restaurant in the city. The entire family. We can finally catch up. You can tell us all about your business plans. The swift change was dizzying. The nice dinner they had promised me was now a celebration at the best restaurant. Actually, I said, my voice, quiet but firm, I already have plans. My team has arranged a graduation party for me. Your team, my mother said, her smile tightening. Surely you can reschedule with your employees. Elena, this is a family moment. The irony of her words was so sharp it almost made me laugh. These people are not just my employees, I said, looking past them to where Leo and Professor Reed were waiting. They are the ones who were there. They were there on Thanksgiving. They were there when the servers crashed. They were there when I had to choose between buying textbooks and eating. They are my team. So, no, I will not be rescheduling. My father's face hardened, the familiar look of disapproval returning. Elena, you are being unreasonable. We are your family. We flew all the way out here to celebrate you. You flew out here because you read an article in Forbes. I said. It wasn't an accusation. It was just a fact. The uncomfortable silence that followed was broken by Sophia. Can I come to your party? She asked. Her voice small. She was looking at me, not at our parents. That condo thing is ridiculous. I just have 2 lines. It's not a career. I want to. I want to see what you actually built. And honestly, their celebration dinners are so boring. Her honesty was like a small shock. I looked at my sister, really looked at her, and saw a person for the first time, not just a symbol of my parents' favoritism. I nodded at her. Yes, I said. You can come. We're at the hotel downtown. Leo can text you the address. Sophia. My father barked. We have plans as a family. No, Sophia said, her voice shaking a little, but holding. I want to go with Elena. My mother looked between us, her mind clearly racing, trying to calculate the new social dynamic. Well, perhaps we can all attend Elena's celebration. As a family, I shook my head. No, I don't think that's a good idea. Not right now. I looked at my father, at his angry, confused face. Dad, I've been managing just fine without your insights for 4 years. What I wanted today was for my family to be proud of me for graduating, not for what I've built, or how much it's worth. After everything we've done for you. He began. What? Exactly, I asked, my voice still quiet. I have you done for me. I worked 3 jobs. I paid for my own food. I found my own mentors. I built my company without $1 of your money. I took the bus here today. Dad, just like you suggested. He had no answer. He just stared at me, his jaw tight. I have to go, I said, turning away. My guests are waiting. Elena, my mother, called after me, her voice disparate. We are still your parents. We deserve to be part of your success. I paused. I looked back at them. 2 strangers standing on a lawn, their programs scattered at their feet. You can be part of my life, I said, but it will be on my terms, not just my success. I'm not that little girl in the corner doing her homework anymore, just hoping you'll notice me. I don't need you to notice me. I know my own worth. With that, I turned around. I walked away from them. I walked across the green lawn, under the bright blue sky, toward Leo and Professor Reed, who were waiting for me with proud, welcoming smiles. I was, for the first time, truly free. 1 year later, I stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows of my office in San Francisco. The real office, not the small rental. We took up 3 floors. Aura Diagnostics was on the cover of Forbes again, this time for the AI that cured cancer before it began. Our user base was in the millions. Our technology was being licensed by the biggest hospitals in the world. Our company was valued at over $5 billion. But the view wasn't what mattered. The real transformation had been quieter. My relationship with my parents was complicated. They had tried, repeatedly, to insert themselves into my success. My father had offered to join the board, an offer I politely but firmly declined. My mother had tried to arrange at-home photo shoots with magazines, to position herself as the woman who raised a genius. I had established clear, firm boundaries. We spoke on holidays. They were not part of my company, and they were slowly learning to be part of my life. A life where their approval was no longer the currency. The most unexpected change was Sophia. She had come to my graduation party that night. She had watched, wide-eyed, as Leo and my team toasted me, not as a CEO, but as a friend. 2 weeks later, she had called me. She had deferred her acting school. She had turned down the condo. I don't want them to buy me a life. Elena, she had said, I want to build one. Like you. She was now living in San Francisco, in her own small apartment, She was working as an intern at Aura Diagnostics. Not for me, but in our charitable foundation, the one I had established to fund scholarships for students from low-income backgrounds. She was good at it. She was smart. And for the first time, she was trying. We were having dinner, once a week. We were, slowly, learning to be sisters. Professor Reed was now the chair of my foundation, and Leo was still my COO, my partner, and my best friend. We had built our own family. That, I thought, as I looked out at the city, was the true measure of success. It wasn't the number in the bank account. It was the knowledge that I had built a life, not from what others had given me, but from what they had not. Their neglect had been a cold, dark soil, but it had forced me to grow my own roots, and they were strong. Have you ever felt like you were overlooked by the very people who should have been your biggest supporters? Have you ever had to find your own strength and build your own family? Share your story in the comments below. We all have a journey, and hearing yours might be exactly what someone else needs to keep going. If my story touched you, please give this video a like, and subscribe to the channel for more stories about finding your own way. Remember, your worth is not determined by who sees it. It's determined by what you build.